We had a firing after 5 seasons of really no organizational progress. The Philadelphia Flyers fired general manager and president of hockey operations Chuck Fletcher a week after letting him oversee one last trade deadline for the foundering franchise. Former Flyer Danny Briere was named the interim GM while the organization begins the process of permanently filling 2 separate positions, president of hockey ops and general manager. Briere was the special assistant to the GM for the last year after spending 5 years with Maine up in the coast. Right now, only Columbus and Montreal have fewer points in the East than Philly. They've made the playoffs once since 2018. Not bad enough to make the lottery odds. And then there was that clip I sent you guys of Fletcher at I think it was a season ticket holder meeting. That was just really awkward. He was talking about an app that can like make up trades for you. It just sounded like cap friendly. He mentioned JVR's name in a trade. It was just like, Jesus Christ, man. But anyways, he's gone. I know the fans have been looking for it.
The way that he described it was it was an app that would tell you whether the proposal, the trade proposal, was fair or not, and that potentially he made it sound like he was actually making decisions based off what this app was telling him. So obviously not a good look. I don't know how much stock I want to put into that, whether he ended up making the decision because of the app. Sometimes because of all this analytics talk, some of these GMs are trying to maybe play catch up a little bit and use them to their advantage, where in some cases it's like that is not where you go look. Okay, so biggest surprise is the fact that they did this after the trade deadline. I just think it speaks volumes to maybe the disconnect that's going on throughout the whole organization.
Oh, there's a big one.
I don't want to talk poorly on them. We went there at the beginning of the year and they took care of us. There's so many wonderful people there. But from what I gathered from the trip was ever since Comcast bought it, they don't treat the alumni as well, where they've been kind of pushed off to the side, and maybe they don't treat the fans the way they once did too, right? So now all of a sudden you try to change the guard, you get Fletch in there, and let's start off by saying, like, he's a wonderful guy. Like, he's awesome, right? I think he could self-admittedly say that he didn't personally do a very good job. I think he admitted it when they had that press conference right after the trade deadline. Hated a majority of his moves, didn't really understand them. Maybe he was, in fact, getting them from the app. But just overall, from top to bottom, it's just been a bit of a shit show. My understanding was when Ron Hextall was there, he would allow nobody to have any type of saying on what was going on. He was making the final call, and it wasn't really much of a powwow in getting everybody's opinions. I heard that the pendulum swayed too much the other way then when Chuck Fletcher was involved, where maybe some of these moves can't be blamed on him. Maybe they were being ordered down from the top. And I think that sometimes when you have this old guard as part of an organization that they feel because of what they've accomplished in the past, maybe they have some entitlement as to how much power they should have in these decisions. But to keep up as the fucking general manager and know the what and the who's who of what's going on, you have to fucking be on the pulse of the league nonstop. So to blame Fletch for all these moves that happen, I can't do it because I don't know who was the one recommending doing them. But if most of them were on him and those were his decisions, catastrophic, and he's set the organization back a little bit. And the fact that they didn't unload much else or get creative at the deadline, you saw some of these other teams get creative with stuff, whether it was retaining salaries and gaining draft picks. It was like, what are you doing here? Fold your hand. Doug Armstrong folded his hand. Look at the returns that he got based on where he was at the time. So just a big head scratcher from the total organization in general. I hope they could figure things out and kind of bridge that gap to where maybe the fans feel about where the organization is at. And if in fact that the alumni is not really as involved in being treated the way that they were before the new ownership took over, maybe they should look to maybe mend that and get them more involved, because I'm pretty sure during these dark times, those fans can at least lean on those good memories of having those alumni around walking the halls and get you through basically the shit years. Because that's like,
don't you think like it's almost time to like cut the cord from the old ways of the Flyers and like there's so much nepotism there that like all it is former Flyers that have been there forever. And you're exactly right, because when Hextall was there, he's like, I'm done. I think Holmgren and Bill Barber and Bobby Clark, they're super involved, and there's probably like all of a sudden Hextall's like, no, we're not doing too many cooks in the kitchen thing. And then all of a sudden it's gone back to now where, like you say, like Fletcher, a lot of the times, I don't even think, from what I've heard, like that Ristolainen re-signing, which is like, I don't know what they were thinking, but that's something where it's like, oh, this is a Flyers type player. This is a Broad Street bully. It's like,
yeah, double down on the fact they traded for him when they shouldn't have I think they gave up multiple first rounders for him.
That's
at least
the bad
one,
thing.
I know.
They don't even have a lot of draft picks like coming up. Like all right, so then they gave Arizona 2 draft picks. One of them was a second rounder just to take Gostisbehere. Right? And then you see what Carolina does in terms of then they trade draft picks just to be able to talk to D'Angelo before they signed him. So it's been all this mismanagement of players they're signing, draft picks they're giving away, too many cooks in the kitchen, and all these things that lead back to all of their leaning on the old Flyers and the guys who got it done. They haven't won a cup in 50 years, dude. It's you got to at some point kind of cut the cord from the past. I know that may not sit well with a lot of fans, but
Edmonton
there's a new way of doing things. What?
Edmonton had to do it just to a certain degree.
Edmonton had to do it, and it was the same type thing there. Now, Daniel Briere may be awesome. The one thing I love about Daniel Briere, it wasn't retire and sit around and Broom, you're brought back into the fold. He's been in the coast, and he's been learning how this goes at a lower level. And all the most successful people, like Chris Drury, he started at the bottom and he worked his way up. Yeah, granted, once you get up and move up the ladder, it then comes to the conclusion, what you did and where you're going to end up sitting. But you can't just hop in and all of a sudden be running teams. So Briere at least has some experience at the East Coast League level, and he's been very open to analytics and all these different things, whereas it's the Flyers have relied on not only trying to turn this thing around so quick, but they've relied on guys who did it a long time ago when the game was just a lot different. And when you have all these different opinions and guys telling you what to do, it's I kind of feel for Fletcher a little bit. I'm not at all saying he didn't do a bad job. He didn't, but you said right off the hop, I don't even think a lot of these decisions were his decision. So when you have all these guys telling you what you have to do and what you shouldn't do, it makes it pretty hard to kind of go on what you think you should do because you have different opinions left and right coming at you all the time. Briere said this needs to be a full rebuild. Torts made it pretty clear with that letter as well, and they haven't done it in so long. And you look at Chicago the great years, you look at Pittsburgh all these years, you look at all the teams who've had serious success, that's what it takes. And I know that the big discussion from people in terms of full rebuild is oh, the fans are just going to shut off. Well, they're going to come back when they start winning. I understand there's this worry of oh my God, through these 3-4 years, however it takes, it's going to be a disaster. We're not going to sell tickets, blah, blah, blah. Well, do you want to deal with the constant malaise of being an average team and barely even in the fight of trying to get in the playoffs? Or do you want to be really bad and get really good? It doesn't always work that way because the draft doesn't go well and things can happen, but there's no other way that they can do it now. They have to completely rebuild. They should be saying anyone above the age of 25 is available. And we don't even need an amazing return back. Just get us back to where we're just playing prospects. We're going to be shitty. I actually think Torts would be a really good coach for a rebuild too, because he's going to teach you what it takes compete-wise. You're not going to have the skill, but he's at least going to be there and be able to teach these kids what it's like to be a pro and compete every night. So right now, as a Flyers fan, you got to be disgusted, but you want this team to be bad the next 2 years. It sucks to say, but there's no other way to get good.
People were saying that for president, Ray Whitney's came up and also Shane Doan. So the biggest component to that is I don't know what his roundtable was, Chuck Fletcher, but having the right roundtable and being able to bounce ideas and not just having a bunch of yes men in the room. It's important the team that you're going to build as well around you. And Briere is just the type of guy where he's going to listen to your opinion as well. He's not stubborn and set in his ways. He has more of that new school approach as well with the credibility as a player. And to add, if they end up adding one, if not both of those guys, Ray Whitney's been around the game of hockey forever. I mean, he was a stick boy
awesome.
Trainer with the Edmonton Oilers when Gretzky was playing. Ended up playing probably over 1,200 games, over 1,000 points. I think that he should be at some point considered for the Hall of Fame. But to have a guy like that, I think he was also one of the final guys in the job for the San Jose. He had his name in the ring for there when Greer ended up getting it. So to have those two guys as part of your staff, they have a lot to offer, and also two guys who have a complete pulse on what's going on nowadays. That's going to be important to his success as well. So I'm happy for Briere, and as you said, he's earned the right based on going to grind it out at the lower level.
And he's just interim, but they're gonna from like what I read, they're gonna have a president of hockey ops, and then they're gonna have the GM. Fletcher was doing both. It's a lot, right? And I know Briere's just the interim, but you'd think he'd get one of those spots based on how the next few months go. And it wouldn't be fair to mention, they made the trade for Ellis, who's a great defenseman. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully he can play hockey again. That was a kick in the dick, right? And then you miss Couturier all year. Kim Atkinson's been out all year. And then, as I mentioned, you got to rebuild and you got to be bad and get high draft picks. Well, it really sucks what happened with Nolan Patrick, because he looked like a surefire prospect, and that's one of those, we're bad, we get the second overall pick, and then that happens. That's the risk. That's what Edmonton went through for so long with all these picks, and they're not getting any better. There certainly is that's the argument for we can't go full rebuild. You're never sure about these draft picks. Understandably so, but in the past, the way teams become great again is through the draft. So there's just been so many different things that have gone sideways for the Flyers this last little while. Not to mention the COVID year, they were actually pretty good in 2020 when the season shut down. So I really like Chuck, though, and Biz and I have been around him personally. He was the assistant GM in Pittsburgh, great person. So you hate to see guys that and that are good people go through this, but it was a tough run.
Can I ask you guys, if you're Danny Briere, like, what is the first move you're making this offseason?
Well, he mentioned the word rebuild. He said that, and I'm sure maybe it's a split in the fan base as to what they want to do at this point. But I say fucking full blown rebuild. There's no other way around it.
I would be as bad as possible next year with a coach who's not going to let these guys be bad and skate through it. He's going to be a motherfucker. I disagree
with you on the Torts comment, where it's like I think there's a balance in between the two. I just don't like the way he carves the guys publicly so much, and how he
kind of pumps their tires though. Like a week later, he'll kind of pump a guy up that he's been hard on.
I don't think he's
I don't know,
evolved
like going
enough.
through a rebuild, man. Like, who do you want? Like a younger guy? It's definitely going to be tough. It's going to be tough sledding for a while, but to see true greatness again, it's going to have to happen, and they've never done it. They've never done it once.
Another name mentioned as a possible president of hockey ops is Eric Lindros from Elliott Friedman. Also, Charlie O'Connor in The Athletic did a great piece of what you guys were just saying. Like, they got to kind of strip down this old culture, start anew, and turn the page basically on all the history of this team. And Ristolainen, he was traded. I just checked it. He was traded for Robert Hagg, a first and a second rounder. They gave up all that for him. As for what I would do, man, I mean, it's simple. You just fucking trade guys, who get rid of whoever you can. I mean, older guys who got some term left, you got to strip it down for parts, almost like a shitty old car. Just get rid of what you can and go from there. But I mean, I've been calling this with the Flyers zone since we started the show. Yeah. Not good enough for the playoffs, not bad enough for a good lottery pick, and they're still there all these years later because they've been kind of clinging to this thing. So, I mean, I don't know how they couldn't get. I mean, they couldn't get even a 7th or 8th rounder for Van Riemsdyk at the deadline. I find that hard to believe. 31 other teams wouldn't take a flyer on him for something cheap. So I don't know, man. I think the fans do deserve better there. So we'll see what happens going forward. Other news there: Tony DeAngelo got a 2-game sussy, speared Corey Perry right in the nuts. Afterwards, he said he wanted to fight him. Perry didn't want to go. I don't think that's really a license to whack a guy in the nuts.
Hey, you can't do that.
But the way Tampa, you ever see those like documentaries, Biz, about like gangs, so like when they jump at a new gang member, they all go over and beat him up. That's what it looked like what Tampa did to DeAngelo. Like 6 guys jumped on a 5, and then the Flyers, they really didn't come to the defense all that much. Yeah, they didn't really break much of a sweat there.
Well, so for Tampa for a while now, anytime any of their players get hit, it's a fucking 5-man mutiny every time, and that's just a sign of a good team who cares about each other and they love each other, and that's why they win. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying DeAngelo's guys don't love him, but they're probably like, if you spear a guy in the nuts, you probably deserve a bit of a shit kicking. And as you said, just because the guy doesn't want to go yet. As much as the Worm probably deserved it, I don't know what he said to him or what he did accidentally on purpose, because we know something happened for him to do that. Were you watching the game, Whit?
I just saw the clip. I just saw that clip. I try not to watch Philadelphia play ever. thing I started laughing at, like Perry, if he's not 38 yet, he's turning 38 soon. Like, nothing has changed. Like,
No.
I feel so old. He's still out there every single shift being a complete rat, pissing people off. It's incredible. Like, I don't know what he's going to do when he retires. He's going to have to not wash his hands in the bathroom and just hope a guy says something to him.
He'll be mixing it up at men's league. He'll be playing beer league hockey just to stir it up with a full fucking cage on.
It's just so funny to me. Like, at the end of that, he got slammed down pretty hard, didn't he? I don't know. He ended up going down hard on that. He looked like he could have hit his head on the ice, too. I'm like, this guy will never stop. It is unbelievable. He cannot function on the ice without being in the middle of madness. So you just have to respect it.
You ever spear a guy in the nuts?
I got Ovechkin by accident. I got fined. And I told you, Colin Campbell said to me, at least you got the right guy. He was totally fucking around, but I was laughing. I went to lift up Ovi's stick, and I caught him right in the nuts. He was down screaming in pain. I was like, I'm dead.
Red dot on you the rest of the game?
I was like, I'm a dead man. And nobody ended up jumping me or anything. I think it was pretty evident I didn't mean to, but I did get fined like $5,000 for it.
That was early Washington game, or early Washington years with Ovi. That's when they didn't have the winning culture.
No.
If you would have got jumped by the rest of the team,
no,
that's
but they
the
had
winning
like
culture.
Matt Bradley, they had Brian Sotheby, they had guys who were tough as shit that were willing to do anything. I think they're like, oh, we're not gonna pump in that tall goofy bastard's eyes shut. We don't need to. He's too valuable on the ice.
We'll let Tim Jackman take care of that.